because we have a lot of content to get through today, and I want to give Karen a really good shot at hitting these three big questions that we have for her today. So Karen, welcome. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Always good
Of
to see you.
course, of course.
So testing is important. It's right now our best glimpse into a person's health, understanding the different bodily systems, what's out of balance that needs to be corrected and worked on. So as far as testing, typically when somebody comes to us, have been diagnosed. They have done basic testing, they've done scans. They have a little bit of information and they're trying to figure out next steps. So typically, anybody, whether it's somebody who's just doing preventative work or somebody who has received a diagnosis, typically a doctor will always order a CBC, which stands for complete blood count, or a CMP and or, which is complete comprehensive metabolic panel. Okay. So those are great, but we can dive in a little bit more with suggesting more markers in those blood draws so we can get a better picture. So we like to take those, the CBC and CMP, but we like to dive more into it. And the reason is for oncology, we can kind of get a sense of imbalances that are opening up the door to cancer, right? What is allowing cancer to flourish in the body? Where did the immune system maybe break down? Where is there inflammation? What is feeding the cancer? Those are the questions that we're trying to get a better idea of by ordering more labs.
So what I'm hearing you say, Karen, really is this is in my interpretation, this is about empowerment. Really, we're taking two existing tests, as you mentioned, that we typically have done, and then we're also opening the door to digging a little bit deeper into figuring out not necessarily the why, but many of the questions that we met, like more of the specifics, more of maybe the nuance. So there would be a good argument to being able to not only read one set of results, but also being able to pair it with additional information. Am I hearing that correctly?
You're spot on. We're trying to get as much intel as we can, right? Knowledge is power. So it shouldn't be scary. It's allowing us to go, oh, metabolically speaking, you're out of balance. You're out of optimal range. And we need to work on that to know that this blood glucose that's possibly too high and causing insulin resistance is not feeding a cancer cell.
Mm.
What can we do there to bring that down? And then monitoring that through additional testing moving forward. So you have the assurance and, the confidence that you're doing the right things and you're making improvements on your metabolic health would
So
be
let me ask you one more question before you push on. So again, we love all the team members on somebody's journey. We're not picking apart integrative. We're not picking apart complementary. But I do want to focus in on complementary medicine for just a moment. If we agree that an oncologist or a general doctor, again, just depending on who the person is that's looking for deeper information, we wouldn't necessarily, this is something that we might have to advocate for in order to have additional information. Could you just speak on that a little bit? Because I do think that our community, this is, again, we talk about it each and every month, this is a full-time job that somebody didn't sign up for, right? And so what we want to do is be able to provide the tools, tips, and strategies and the resources that get them to optimal terrain, as you mentioned, as quickly as possible. But let's just say that they've already been working with a complementary pathway, a doctor in that. Is
Yeah.
it a correct assumption that we would have to advocate to go a little deeper with something like a nutritional test or additional testing?
Right. If you're working with a conventional oncologist, chances are they're not going to check for all of the markers that I would suggest,
Mm.
right? That would do this deep dive into knowing inflammation and what's possibly proliferating, helping cancer cells proliferate. So there I would say here are some suggested lab markers. I'd give a list and reasoning for those markers so that they can take that to their oncologist and go, my nutritionist is suggesting I get
Good.
additional. Are you willing to order these? And if so, which ones. If we take that route, we have a really good chance that insurance is going to cover those additional lab runs.
Beautiful, beautiful, because that was my next question. That's
Right.
awesome. Please
Right.
keep going. I just wanted to share that because I do think that the topic is overwhelming. And again, when we say the word testing, automatically there's triggers involved in that, right? And what we're sharing today is this high level overview on being able to kind of decipher what is good for us, what do we need to know, and the end goal, as you mentioned, we want that optimal terrain. That's the end goal of the conversation. No matter what tests we're coming up with, why we want to know is because we want every piece of information possible that lets you help the person, somebody like you, help the person get to where they want to be, right?
Correct. Yes.
Please, please. I love it. I love it.
Okay, so if not with a conventional traditional oncologist, and you're seeing, let's say, a oncology, naturopathic oncology doctor, that doctor is probably ordering the exact same labs that I would suggest anyway. So then you're just sending a nutritionist like myself that lab report, and then we can just pick up and go. And I am looking at it from a nutritional lens of saying your doctor is trying to figure out your care, your therapies, what treatments that you need. I'm looking at it on building up that terrain, balancing out that terrain so that you have less side effects. You have a stronger immune system. You're metabolically healthy. Those are the things that I am looking at regarding those same labs that an oncology naturopathic doctor is going to be ordering. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. I think that that is so valuable because we know that food is medicine, right? It can be some really strong medicine. And I love what you just said. Not only is it creating this optimal terrain, but it's also about what are the things that can support our treatment. How can we use food that way? So again, just to circle back, we're talking about ways in which we can glean information that just are supporting the healing journey nutritionally. Mm-hmm. So give me an example of why somebody would, beyond just the diagnosis, what kinds of things are we looking for if we did want to go a little bit deeper?
Yeah, we're looking for imbalances. So you have all these bodily systems, and you need to know what is out of balance that's making you feel bad, is keeping your immune system suppressed, needs to be corrected. So you have overall health and also a stronger bodily system to handle treatments or whatever you may be going through. So, and this goes, I just want to say, for prevention as well,
Yep.
right? We
Yep.
all have lifestyles that are not perfect, and we may have imbalances that we can correct from a prevention perspective that we never have to go down that road. So yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think one of the problems, and I'm speaking on behalf of our community, is, and somebody who has gone through some of this nutrition testing herself, I think part of it is that I'm thrilled that we're going to go a little deeper because I do think that the information can be confusing. And I also think some of the reporting can be a little over the generic head. If we don't have a background in nutrition, what do we do then with the information? That was a rhetorical question because we have so much more to cover ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I can't help but plug the idea of connecting with the appropriate team member so that you can then, it's one thing to make the decision to go get the test, but then it's like with every test, what are you going to do with the information? It's not enough that we just got it if it's out of range, in range, optimal, not optimal. The point of it is that I think consumer needs to understand the why behind what we're doing, right? And so I love the idea of just giving you a plug and saying somebody like Karen, who is trained to be able to not only take those reports and kind of dissect it into real time usage. How do we use that information? I can't ignore that piece because I do think that that's a gap. Would you agree that people don't quite know why they're doing the test and then they go and do it, and what do we do with that information?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. So let's just take inflammation by itself. Inflammation markers are not included on a CBC or a CMP. Okay. So we know that inflammation sets the party room for cancer cells to thrive. So we are always looking at inflammation and going, where is it? And how do we lower it? And are we maintaining that lowering? Are we doing the right things to lower your bodily inflammation or inflammation? So
So one
there,
more time, just to repeat, you're saying that we don't typically have an inflammation marker on our general CBC or the CMP, right? And so this is something that that inflammation marker would be a high priority of understanding because we know, based on what you're getting ready to say, about inflammation, correct?
that's right. I
Okay.
mean, cancer is associated with inflammation. So we want to, and other diseases too. So we want to know where it's at. If it's high, we need to address it. Are we addressing it the right way? And are you monitoring that? And is it coming down? All the things that we can get from a blood inflammation marker. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's three. There's CRP,
Yep.
there's LDH, and there's sedimentation rate, which is sometimes listed as ESR on a lab marker. Okay. So we call that the trifecta. And if we look at those three, we can get a pretty good idea of what inflammation looks like in the body. Okay. You may have very low inflammation. You may have high inflammation, but there's things you can do with lifestyle and food to help lower that. So we would implement those items. Okay. Are we bombarded with toxins? Do we need to scrub toxins out of our home? Omega 3s, taking a fish oil, for instance, is our go-to nutrient to lower inflammation. Obviously, if you searched on Google and said anti-inflammatory diet, it would pull up a whole list of foods that you can have. But it's really kind of scrubbing out the bad and putting in the good. Okay.
Huge, huge. I love that because that is one of the biggest things that we end up talking about is inflammation. So just for our listeners, one more time, that trifecta that you talked about was the CRP, right? LDH and the ESR. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
That, my goodness, that gold, because again, it's not going to say on the test inflammation markers.
It won't. I mean, the list that I give clients always says the reasoning behind the marker because I know they're taking that to the doctor, and a doctor may go, "No, I'm not doing that. That's extra." So I want them to have the power of saying, "This is why my nutritionist is suggesting these things." Okay. So that's just an example of what we're trying to dive into from how a nutritionist can help improve your health through additional testing.
Excellent.
Okay. We kind of jumped right into what to test.
Yes, we did.
So, bodily systems, we're trying to look at gut health. We're trying to look at liver health. We're trying to, look at thyroid health. Is there a nutrition deficiency? Um,
One second. If you're listening, can we just need everybody on mute just so Karen can be crystal clear? Thank you so much.
So knowing that we're looking at these bodily systems, right? Now we can look at these labs and then the lab markers not only include inflammation, but they're going to go over a complete thyroid panel. For some reason, doctors typically just check very little thyroid panels. And I don't understand why. But a complete thyroid panel would include your antibodies, would include free T3, so that we can better, T3 uptake. And then we can kind of get a better sense of what's happening with your thyroid. That's another example. Um, there's things that spur cancer cell proliferation. Copper, iron, and calcium are minerals that, if high, could be helping cancer cells proliferate. So we always look at, those minerals and go, are those low? Are those in optimal range? Or are they chance a problem that we need to address? So heavy metals, obviously your microbiome, the gut, 75% of your immune cells are residing in your gut. So is your gut health optimal? If you're going through treatment, chances are that's an area that needs to be addressed no matter what, and does for even a year after treatment because of the impact conventional treatments have on the microbiome. Okay. So, we were vitamin D. Very, very rarely is vitamin D included on a comprehensive metabolic panel. Vitamin D tells us if your immune system is getting what it needs. So if you have low vitamin D and not adequate levels to keep you optimal, are you supporting your immune system properly?
Mm.
And when you look at a normal test that a doctor will run and those ranges on the test, those ranges are there to help a doctor diagnose you with a disease, a condition. It's You'll notice that a nutritionist or an oncology naturopath will have a different range. It's a tighter range, and that's an optimal range. Okay.
So wait a minute, that's like a mic drop moment, Karen. We're not going to blow past that because I'm going to repeat that.
Okay.
So when that is just the hugest thing. When we go to a conventional doctor, the goal of those reading those test results in part is to primarily go after and search for that chronic condition, that diagnosis. They're looking, those range numbers are about finding something, right?
Yes.
Whereas what Karen is talking about today, when we're taking a deeper dive, somebody like Karen is looking for ranges that might be smaller in range to pull the person into optimal. That to me is just the biggest aha moment. I mean, that was huge for me when I first heard you say that, because I think both sides are doing their job, right? But what we're looking at is really kind of narrowing the focus down, and we are looking for optimal numbers. It's not that one's better than the other, but the job that they're doing is a little different. True?
Absolutely. My job is to keep you out of the disease range.
Yes.
My job is to keep you in optimal health.
Love that.
Okay. So when you get that, let's just take vitamin D, for instance. I think the normal range on a lab report for vitamin D starts at 40. Okay. For me, that's low. You need to be no lower than 60. Optimal would be 80 on a vitamin D reading on a lab report. So if I see 40, when you get your report, you're going to go, oh, vitamin D is fine because there's no red flag, no marker that says high if it's 44. But when I look at 44, I go, oh, that's low. And we need to work at getting your vitamin D up
Understood.
optimal to 60 to 80.
Love
Okay.
that.
Okay. So that's an example. Um,
Homocysteine.
Homocysteine, thank you. So methylation is a pretty big system that we look at within your body. Methylation helps with detoxification, metabolism, thyroid health, DNA repair. So it's pretty darn important. A lot of people know about the MTHFR SNP. A lot of people can get that tested individually on their own or can request it to be added to labs. And one of the best glimpses that we have about the health of your methylation cycle is including a homocysteine lab marker in your blood draw in your lab report. So if homocysteine is high, that gives us an idea that your methylation system may not be optimal. Okay, you're having a hard time processing homocysteine. I like to always say that folate and B12 do this nice little waltz within the methylation cycle that keep the methylation cycle completing itself. And if your homocysteine is high, that tells us B12, folate may not be a good dance partner, and you're not completing that cycle.
So a little confused there. So we don't want the homocysteine to shouldn't be high, but we're gleaning the information from our folate and our B12 number. Did I get that right or wrong?
Well, you can glean it from multiple things, but let's just say you test homocysteine and
Yeah.
it's out of optimal range. That
Okay.
tells me something is wrong with your methylation cycle, possibly, right? So, optimal for homocysteine is 16 to 18. Okay.
And is it listed that way, Karen? Is it
No,
listed? It's listed as what?
I think it's in the 30s.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But so if I see anything over 18, then I start really monitoring that. If it's super high, we address it right away. And that is typically addressing B12 and folate. Okay. Are they getting adequate amounts of methylated B12 and folate? Is there a need for a supplement? We
Yeah.
have those kinds of conversations at that point.
Beautiful.
If it's 19, I'm going to monitor it and I'm going to say, we need to retest. Anything out of optimal range in my world needs to be retested because we need to know we're correcting it.
Got it. That's huge.
Yeah,
Huge.
if you are optimal on all these things, then you are doing great. Your system is balanced, and we need to just test those once a year.
Got it.
If something is out of balance and out of optimal range, then the suggestion is, depending on budget and insurance and all of those things, test 1 to 3 months to know you are correcting that out of balance, out of optimal range marker.
Got it. That's interesting too. We're not waiting. If it's out of the optimal range, it's okay to test if it's a yearly. But when we're trying to get things back in balance, we're looking at them every couple, like 3 months. Like we're going to do the thing, whatever the thing that you're recommending us to do,
Yeah.
and then we come back and retest and make sure it's working.
Right. So let's go back to inflammation for an example. We know that it takes 90 days to completely lower inflammation if it's a gut issue, right? Let's say you have a leaky gut, the leaky gut's causing inflammation in the body. We know we have to give the body 90 days to completely lower that inflammation. So that's when I would say, okay, your inflammation is high. We are suspecting you have some gut issues. Let's work on that. And in 3 months, we're going to retest your inflammation.
Got it. Did you give, by any chance, did you give the optimal ranges for our trifecta to circle back?
I did it, but I can give those to you afterwards because they're all a
Deal.
little different.
You
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. Okay, so we have mainly been talking about blood tests, things that you
Correct.
can get a blood draw for. On top of that, as it is additional information, it's not required to meet with a nutritionist, but it's helpful to also have tests regarding your microbiome or your genetic makeup. And what I mean about genetics is not cancer genes, but your internal born with genetic makeup that we can get a glimpse into your bodily systems. And there's a couple of tests that consumers can buy for that. One is nutrition genome and one is called 3x4. Okay. Both are around $300. I think Nutrition Genome is 350 right now. Both can be purchased as a consumer. However, both are about 80 to 90 pages reports.
Right.
So
Right.
going back to your earlier comment about
Yes.
being overwhelmed, they give nice charts and nice summaries at the beginning to help you as a consumer try to digest this. But as a nutritionist, what I'm trying to do is put those pieces of the puzzle together. Okay. So this is where um, you may not know you have the MTHFR gene. Okay. There's a whole methylation cycle in these genetic testings. These are cheek swabs. You're mailed a kit, you swab your cheek, you send it in, you get an online report. So let's say your homocysteine is high, and we go, let's do a nutrition genome test. Then we get the nutrition genome test. It says you have an MTHFR SNP or a genetic mutation, if you will. And you start putting the pieces of the puzzles together. Have you ever had any symptoms of a methylation issue? Are you gaining weight? Have you had miscarriages? We start putting more things together and going, okay, well, we know methylation is really important about DNA repair, detoxification, metabolism, thyroid health. So, is this part of your journey? We're getting a lot of input that is suggesting you may have reduced function in methylation.
Mm,
So let's address that.
yeah.
And we can feel more confident because we've got this genetic report and we have this blood test and we have this known history about this client. You know what I mean? And
I
that's
like what you said too. It's about completing the whole, it's like putting puzzle pieces together to
get the picture.
observe lovely you,
Yeah.
right? And so being able to look at each of these pieces, if you will, and then just allowing it kind of it feels less scary and more, like I said, empowering that we're just figuring out where these deficiencies or these overdrives are occurring.
Right.
It's a lot though, Karen. I mean, for somebody, it really speaks to how deep we have the ability to go and how much correction that we have control over, I think.
It can be overwhelming because, again, if you are just getting this diagnosis and just getting your scans and just interviewing doctors, and what you always say, you never signed up for this job, you've been given a full-time job, you don't know anything about any of this, it is overwhelming. So this is where assembling the right team, asking the right questions, coming up with priorities. When are you starting treatment? What does that look like? What does your lifestyle look like? What are you mentally able to handle? Um, so many things, right?
Yes,
So this
yes.
is why having that team and believing in your care plan is really important because you should have some reassurance along the way that you're on the right path versus being scared and not knowing that you're doing everything you can. This is where all these people can come into place and make your life a little bit easier by giving you the right guidance.
So I'm wondering, let's use your example. Let's say we're connected with both conventional medicine and then we're also connected with an integrative provider. This might be a silly question, but I try to think along the lines of like when you're in it, when you're in the hot seat and you really need to make decisions, sometimes I think they're hard to make. So would somebody, in your opinion, it's would somebody fast track and go right to the nutritionist and then the nutritionist would then be able to say like this is what we're going to take a little bit deeper look at, or would it be a situation where finding the right integrative provider, the right doctor, right, to be able to say like, listen, I got this report, we ordered these blood tests as you mentioned, that's something that you can read. Is it their job to then say, I would highly recommend you working with an oncology nutritionist who can read these reports and kind of give you strong suggestions by way of food and drink and whatnot? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I think the roadmap is sometimes unclear,
Yeah.
but by the time that they get to you, that there's been a lot of other conversations that have happened. So in your best recommendation, somebody receives the diagnosis, they start making decisions. Is this something that you put high priority? I think I know the answer, but I'm saying help somebody who doesn't know the priority of food,
Yeah.
lifestyle, behaviors, that understand at what point in time does this fit into
Yeah.
bringing in a team member?
Um, I will be honest and say I typically see people later in their journey, one from a bandwidth of what they can handle, two as a second attempt to correct an imbalance.
Right.
Nutrition can help you at any phase in your life, let alone a cancering journey. Okay. A nutritionist comes alongside you and says, okay, what are you doing? What's your lifestyle? What are you going through? Okay, I'm going to help you. Is that going to change? Yes. Right? Are you in remission? Are you recouping from treatment? Are you what are we working with caregivers? There's so many different facets to nutrition and it changes. And it's silly to think it's not going to change. It is. That's why a nutritionist along the way is just there to help you with whatever you may be dealing with or needing to correct. Okay. They're not there to give guidance on treatment or, yes or no to conventional whatever. We're just there to say you've chosen your care plan, and now nutrition is the foundation for everything that you need to do to improve your health and improve your chances and increase your immune system support and all the things. So it's not an either or, it's more of we're your buddy and we're support and we're there for the journey.
I can't help but comment on the fact that we are seeing, and again, we don't need to deviate because we have lots more to cover with our testing, but the idea that nutrition is less than or a backseat to some of the other therapies. I feel like it is important to point out that nutrition is and can be therapeutic. And variety of times throughout somebody's journey on the cancering journey. So for example, when my brother was on his journey, there was nutrition protocol before conventional treatment. There was nutritional wisdom and feedback during and then post. And then there was the time when, nutrition came into play with surgeries and post surgeries.
Yes.
So I feel like for our community, the importance of not only talking about the testing, but understanding how, when you say buddy, I almost think equal partner in all the different players that, once again, what is the goal? To get us back to optimal, healthy healing and whatnot, that nutrition needs to slide up there with somebody's, whether or not they're on or they're off. We do need to, again, not to be cheeky, but we are what we eat, and we need to be making choices that support that terrain. So, Karen, where do you want to go next? What test part, what we are testing, where would you like to discuss?
One more thought on this conversation, and then we can move on. A lot of times when we're getting the diagnosis and we're scared and we are feeling an urgency and we have no control, right? We have that uncontrolled feeling that all of a sudden I thought I had control of my life and now I have no control of my life.
Yes.
And at the whim of everybody else. Nutrition actually is something you can control in those.
Amen. Agreed.
So let's say you get the diagnosis and you're waiting for your test results and you're waiting for guidance from the doctor. Make changes to your nutrition because you can.
That is powerful. In a time where we're feeling out of control, this is one thing you have to eat, right? And so deciding and picking the things that are best for you, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
So we can move on now.
Yeah.
Microbiome, I think, is the only thing that we really haven't covered. And again, talking about how connected it is to inflammation, connected it is to your immune system. Obviously, as a nutritionist, I'm always wanting to know about your gut health. What needs to be improved there. So there are some tests. There's different levels of test. A GI map test is kind of a beginning point. You may not have a lot of gut dysregulation symptoms, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, heartburn. If you don't have a lot going on, we may start with a GI map just to make sure that all is well and we have a baseline. And for most part, all of the testing that we're talking about can serve as a baseline. You may not have ever done this intense testing and reporting before. So now we have this lovely baseline on everything. Okay. And we have something to measure against moving.
Will you talk a little bit more about GI map for those of us who don't know what that means?
So your microbiome is about good and bad bacteria, or, commensal bacteria. And when it's healthy, they monitor and balance each other. If they're out of balance, then sometimes the bad bacteria can overgrow and cause issues. So a microbiome test is a stool test, and you send it in to the lab and it reports back on how all these wonderful bacteria are doing. Are they out of balance? Are there some high? Are there some low? And then we can dive into a whole protocol on how to fix that and balance that. Okay.
Yeah.
So knowing about those different bacteria is important on telling us, is there an infection? Is there a yeast overgrowth? What could be causing issues? So that can be a baseline, because let's say you choose to go through chemotherapy, chances are chemotherapy is going to affect your microbiome. But if we have that test ahead of time, then we can go, oh, you were this prior to chemotherapy, and now we're experiencing this. Now let's directly, address that one out of so many hundreds imbalances.
Good. Understood.
A gut zoomer is a little bit more intense of a stool test. It's more reporting. It dives into more microbiome details, and it can tell us a little bit more. So if you come to me and you are having a leaky gut scenario, right? You're not absorbing nutrients, you have all the symptoms of gut dysregulation, then we're going to skip GI map and we're going to go right to a gut zoomer. Okay. So those links are going to be in the show notes
Yep.
for you to get an idea. These tests are pretty reasonable. They're usually around 300, maybe go up to 400, but they're not so bad. They're not such a big hit if you have to buy it individually as a consumer, which you can.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. And then, let's say you have a hormone-based cancer. We are suspecting issues with some of the initial testing, blood tests that you got. The gold standard as of right now for diving more into knowing your hormones is called a Dutch test, DUTCH, and it goes through all of your sex hormones. It will cover cortisol, DHA, all the things, and we can get a better idea of what's going on with your hormones, which is your regulation system, right?
Yes. Again, so much gold there. So who is in charge? Who's in charge of ordering these? Let's just say somebody watches back and they really are curious and want to know. Is this an ask by the patient to the doctor? Is this you taking matters into your own hands and you are handling it? Or once again, coming back to, so for me, I'd call my friend Karen and I'd say, Karen, I would really like to work with you. Here's what I'm looking for. I feel like, and have you tell me where, if somebody's, let's just call it curious. We're curious. Where do we begin? Who do we reach out to? How do we decide?
Right. Well, as far as who's in charge, the patient is always in charge.
Amen.
You are your best advocate. You have this sense of your health that nobody else has. And it's your money, it's your health. You decide your care plan and believe in your care plan. Okay. So gather that intel. I would always start with going above and beyond a CBC and a CMP. I don't care if you are disease-free or dealing with a disease, you dive in more to get better glimpse of your bodily systems. Then you can go, oh, this is out of system. What next for that? Okay. Taking that to your oncologist, your general practitioner, your naturopath, your nutritionist will give you additional intel of what next steps look like. Okay.
Yeah.
And it could be determined on, okay, this is going to affect my treatment. This is going to affect my nutrition plan. Then if there's more, like, again, you have to go back to the gut, because if you're having all this gut dysregulation, then obviously getting more testing to know exactly how to fix it is important.
Yeah. I hear you, and I think the way I'm translating what you said is that I am taking a look at that general information. If I see something that is not in balance, that is a great starting place for somebody. So I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question, but I'm curious, and I'm wondering if our community is curious too. We wouldn't know necessarily if things are covered by insurance until we start getting into this dialogue a little deeper. Is that a fair statement? I'm just trying to give people as much information as possible. If we make the decision, this is what I worry about. If we make the decision that we do want to look under the hood a little deeper and we want to find out more nuance and how we might control imbalances via food, then we start getting into the price tag of things that are perhaps not covered and out of our price range in order to be able to have it covered. So it's really more of a reflection for you, because I know that this is not something, you can't sit there and say yes or no to, but how does one, are there things that we could talk to our doctors about, workarounds? Are there things that are worth going out of pocket for? Are there things that which kind of give us a broad stroke deeper dive, and then we can make the decision each step of the way is really what I'm talking about.
Yep. Always ask your physician if you can order additional labs, if we're, thinking about blood through them, because that's your best chance on getting it covered by insurance.
Yeah.
For instance, I know I have the MTHFR SNP and it's pretty significant on my genetic reporting. So I went to my doctor and said, I'd like to have my homocysteine checked. And my doctor said, well, I can't cover that. And I said, I know I have the MTHFR SNP. And they said, yep, no problem.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So if that's why knowing the genetic report is gold, in my opinion, because it tells you so much information and it gives you the ability to go to a doctor and go, I have a reason for asking for these additional lab markers. Okay. If there's a health reason, chances are, odds are, you can get more things covered through your doctor. If you go through a nutritionist, I can't get anything covered by insurance. Okay. And if you
You're
buy,
not a magician?
no, if you have an HSA, you can submit things through your HSA, your health savings account, to get reimbursed. That's always an option. So let's say you order Nutrition Genome on your own. You can submit that bill through your insurance company if you have a health savings account and get reimbursed through that health savings account.
Right, right, right,
Or
right.
if you've got a credit card connected to your health savings account, you can pay for things like testing through your health savings account. That's why
Right.
it's there. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
those,
think but my takeaway on that one, and I sincerely hope this is so helpful, is if there is a valid reason, make sure you're equipped with that information that you could, just like you did, and present it that way, because there's a good shot or a better shot that it might be covered, by our insurance. I think that that's important. That's really empowering as well, is that sometimes we ask and then it's a no and we just kind of stop rolling, right?
yeah.
But all of us at Believe Big, our number one job is to support people and families on this cancering journey. And while we don't have the end answer, it is content like this with you being able to share. This is not necessarily a workaround. I just don't think, again, it's the full-time job that you didn't sign up for, not having the appropriate questions or prompts to ask for these things if they are covered, I think is really important, because at a certain point in time, this stuff gets really, really pricey, not just what we're talking about nutritionally, but all of these add-on, these complementary therapies that we're trying to do really well by ourselves, and yet we also don't want to financially exhaust the system either. So I think that was huge. Yeah. I want to go back real quick. As I mentioned, the three things that we were to talk about today were when to test, what are we testing, and then how to go about reading reports. And we've kind of danced. Part of the reason I think I'll take ownership is because one conversation kind of leads to the other. But I want to go back to, is there anything that we might have missed? I can go back and name the ones that we covered, but is there anything that we might have forgotten for our listeners on, number one, what to test? Mm-hmm. Depending, and you gave an example of those 4 different kinds of scenarios, like hormonally, and then our gut situation and whatnot. Is there anything that we kind of skipped over because I was pushing you in all different kinds of conversations there?
Well, I mean, there's probably a good 30 amount of lab markers that I would add on to a traditional CBC and CMP. Even a lipid panel is
Right.
not always covered. And we can find out through your triglyceride number if there's a sense of inflammation in the body. So that's important. That's like 6 markers all by itself in a lipid panel. Metabolic markers, usually a CMP, comprehensive metabolic panel, will tell you about your fasting glucose. One, you should always be fasting before you get any kind of blood test done, so that we are getting a true read of what's happening in the blood when you're not metabolizing food. Okay. So we always say no eating for 12 hours prior to a lab draw. Always try to get your lab draw done in the morning. With on top of glucose, your fasting glucose, what's going on with your insulin?
Mm,
That is typically not included on a CMP.
mm.
And knowing what's going on with your A1C, that's giving us a different view of what could possibly be happening. So having a complete metabolic read is really, really important.
Fabulous.
Ferritin, that's your iron stores. Iron is a really, really tricky one because it's constantly changing in your blood. Are you a menstruating person? Did you just eat red meat? There's so much happening with those hemoglobin, those
Mm.
red blood cells. So ferritin is our best read into your iron stores. What's being stored in the body? And again, iron is one of those minerals that if it's high, it's causing oxidative stress. It's helping spur cancer cell proliferation. So that is one that we're always looking at just to make sure it is in optimal range.
Mm.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
So there's a ton. I gave you the big hitters.
Homocysteine, inflammation, vitamin D,
Mhm.
the the nutrition genome, the 3 by 4 were the tests that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Looking at the microbiome, the gut health,
Yeah.
and then all of these other ancillary ones. I don't know, Karen. This was like awesome. It's really valuable information. And in part, I think we talked about this before our session today, is that empowering people to understand the test that they are going to get, and then how to turn around and take that information and use it for good.
Yeah.
Not just to sound the alarm, like, oh my gosh, I've got too much iron stored in the body. Okay, well, what are we going to do about that? So I think it's both. It's finding out the information, and then what are we going to
How
do with
you
it?
address it. Yeah. Think about how a doctor starts their process. They're suspecting cancer. What do? They test.
Yeah.
They run scans. They possibly do a biopsy. They're trying to get as much intel as they can to figure out what they're dealing with and how to address it. Testing, that's scary.
It is.
Those kind of tests, something's wrong. You're scared, right? You're feeling anxiety. You're fearful of the unknown. So I understand why testing has this feeling around it of being really something I don't want to do. I want to stick
Yeah.
my head in the sand and I want to move forward.
Yeah.
This testing, like you said earlier, is more empowering. Tell me what I need to work on. Tell me
Oh,
what I need to do. This is, again, affecting your nutrition and your lifestyle that can give you a sense of control over things you can't control.
yes. Yes.
That's a,
I agree. I 100% agree. So, testing of all different kinds, in particular nutrition, has become quite trending, right? We see a lot of stuff out in the market. So, talk to us a little bit about if we're the consumer and going out, if we bypass integrative doctor, oncology nutritionist, and we are just curious,
Mhm.
what would be your advice in purchasing some of these tests a la carte, straight from consumer to the product?
Yeah. Um, well, there's some tricky things in there because one, you're paying for it on your own, and
Right.
you could be looking at price. A cheaper test may mean that you're not testing all the things, or it may not be as accurate as some other tests.
Mm,
If you're going to go that route, try to do some due diligence. Let's take food sensitivity testing. Okay. Very, very popular consumer-based product that you can buy and get at your home. A lot of the food sensitivity tests that you can buy as a consumer do not include all the antibodies that you should be testing for.
mm,
That will tell you. So when your gut reacts to a food and it initiates that inflammation response, it's it's causing antibodies. It's creating antibodies to go fight that foreign invader. If you don't test for all the antibodies, you're not going to get 100% read on everything, and it may not be as accurate as you think it is.
hmm.
Okay.
Interesting.
So that's something to think of. SIBO, really good breath test. So if you're ordering a SIBO breath or a blood test, may not be as accurate. Same thing for cortisol. Cortisol naturally spikes in the morning and then lowers throughout the day and should be the lowest before you go to bed. If you're not testing cortisol throughout the whole day, then what are you doing?
Mm,
You know what I mean? You need to know it's high in the morning and low at night. If you're just testing it at noon, you have no idea what's happening throughout the rest of the day. So getting a test that forces you to test cortisol multiple times a day, that's a good test.
wow.
Okay. So again, not something that a consumer is always going to know unless you really dive into it and maybe chunk it out and say, okay, I'm more concerned about my adrenal health and my stress levels. I'm going to focus on cortisol and I'm going to research that and get some input and follow some podcasts and, read up on some of the different tests and compare them. Just chunk it out that way. Don't try to do it all at once,
Yeah.
figure out your priorities, through this intel that you're getting, your labs, your doctors, your nutritionist, and then go, okay, priority number one is inflammation. Just going to focus on that.
I love that. That's great. Great advice to prioritize what is the goal that we're trying to achieve and then kind of work out from there. So we have about 8 minutes. And so here's what I propose. Karen, I would like to ask you, is there anything else that we did not touch on that you might want to tell the listeners? We may have already covered and we've hit our hot topics for sure. First. And then second, I would like to give an opportunity to put the questions in the chat. If anyone has anything that they want to ask about nutrition testing for Karen, you are welcome to start putting those questions in the chat right now. Again, I would like to give Karen the last word here. If there's anything that we might not have covered that you thought was super important, love to hear anything you've got. Again, it could be we covered it.
Yeah, I think just a recap of, is testing important? Yes. Starting out your health journey with this vital intel is important. I love that we're doing this in January because we're starting the year. This is a great time to talk about testing, do testing, and figure out where to go throughout the rest of 2026. Dr. Nasha, Metabolic Health, right, is always saying test, assess, address, don't guess. So
Say it
we
again. Say it again for those of us who hadn't heard of that before. What does Dr. Nasha say? She says test. What's the next one?
test, address, no, test, assess, address, don't guess. So
Important.
we are bombarded with social media messages with, after this, we may get information in our feeds about testing. Who knows? But we can get lost in that shuffle of, oh, I should probably get a food sensitivity test, or I should probably do this, or I should probably do that. Um, Knowledge is power. I think you should get testing, but I think you should have direction with it, somebody to help you assess and address it, right? Don't just go willy-nilly,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
go, I got this in my Instagram feed, and so therefore I'm going to do it,
Love
right?
it. Hmm.
Address it by testing. Don't guess on what your issue is.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to check and see our moderator here, Kristen, if there's any questions for Karen before we sign off. Just want to make sure that we address those before we head out.
We do
What
not have any questions currently.
do you know what that means? That means that Karen is brilliant and she answered everything, every question that was in my head and also in all of yours. Well, here's what I'm going to say. Karen, if you are interested and you'd like to be in touch with Karen, it would be my pleasure to connect. So you would send me an email. It's stacy@believebig.org. We are recording this. They will come back with show notes, the recording, and you can have direct access to her. So I just, I'm so grateful, Karen. I'm so grateful for all of you that continue to co-host with me and bring the latest information to our listeners. For those of us who are on the journey, those of us who are not necessarily on the journey, but want to continue to elevate our health. This is a powerful topic. And I am leaving with a couple of really gold nuggets that I'm going to hold really close as I continue on my journey of trying to stay as healthy as I possibly can. First and foremost is understanding that we are using information in this lane to empower ourselves and to do better by way of food, and to be able to use that as a one of our tools, one of our many tools, and not to dismiss that, right? The second thing I'm going to take away from our time together is how important it is to do not only testing where it warrants it, but also interpret it in a way that it's usable, valid information, and that we're not sounding alarms for unnecessarily. We're going to be very strategic with our testing. So I cannot thank you enough. I cannot wait for our next time together. Once again, Karen Schrum, she is an oncology nutritionist working very closely with Believe Big, helping us along the way, making sure that we have all the tools that we might need just to take the next best step, right? Thank you, Karen. And thank you all for joining us. One last call for questions. Kristen, nothing?
No questions currently.
Thank you. Have a wonderful week. I will see you next month. And Karen, thank you again. It was the best.
Thank you. Always good to see you.